Today I have good news for you. The good news today is all about a guy in the Bible whose name is Barnabas. And today we're looking at Barnabas because we're looking at relationships in the Bible. We recognize that relationships are important. In order to get through life, we need a support team or a support group. And we do that in many different ways at Orange Coast Church. We actually have groups that meet on a weekly basis. And sometimes they're more informal, where we don't have a specific location, a specific time to get together, but a person is just a support to us. And we appreciate that because we recognize that no person is an island, that we need each other. Barnabas was an encourager. It's important to have an encourager in your life. We need encouragement. How often do you get discouraged? That's the question for today. And you have your clickers. Yours is white. Make sure the blue light is on. It's turned on. If for some reason it doesn't turn on, you might want to just tap it a little bit. Maybe the batteries got shifted. We want to make sure you have a clicker. Anybody not get a clicker? Raise your hand. We'll get you a clicker. Or if yours for some reason isn't working, raise your hand and we'll get you a new one. Okay, we need one in the front here. Okay. How often do you get discouraged? A, daily. B, weekly. C, monthly. D, seldom. Or E, never. How often do you get discouraged? A, B, C, D, or E? We'll give you 15 seconds. And you can begin now. Daily, weekly, monthly, seldom, or never. We have about 5 seconds left. And 90 of you have voted, and this is what you said. 17 of you said you get discouraged daily. 22 of you said you get discouraged weekly. 7 of you said monthly. And 35 of you said seldom. And then there's 10% of you, 9 of you, that said never. You never get discouraged. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? We're kind of all over the place. And one of the things that we can learn from this is that we're not alike. Some of us get more discouraged more often than others. I get discouraged often, and that's why I need you guys. That's why I need a support team. That's the way it is for me personally. All right, let's go on. And one of the things I wanted to point out to you about a support team has to do with the Academy of Motion Pictures. Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, that is. There's 6,000 members, and every year, we live here in Southern California. It's kind of a big deal, the Academy Awards, and they give out Oscars. And they give out Oscars, and the people who vote for the Oscars are not, Joe and Tom and Dick and Harry, your average person in the world, but the Academy Award is given to an individual in the business, and it's voted on by people who are in the business. So there's 6,000 members who vote, and they vote specifically because they're in that business. So their peers are voting. And what we've discovered is that winners of the Oscars, on the average, live 4 years longer than those who lose. So why is that? I don't know. I'm not a sociologist and can figure all this stuff out. But it appears, at least on the surface, that those who are getting the approval of their peers, those who are getting the approval of their support group, find that it actually translates into more life. They live longer. Now, that may or may not be the reason why they live longer, but it appears that way anyway. So we would take from this the lesson that if we support each other, that we're apt to live longer. One of the reasons we have prayer requests, and we just did this a few minutes ago in our church, is that we want one another to know that people are praying for you. And so we don't just have a list that we hand out and say these people need prayer, but we actually team you up with a prayer partner, and we ask the prayer partner to specifically contact you either through email or telephone to let that person know that you are praying for them. And the reason for that is that we want you to be a support person for that individual who's asked. And they can feel the support because they get a phone call or an email and someone says, I'm praying for you. Isn't that kind of nice? Not only are we asking God to intervene and maybe work a miracle to answer a prayer in a specific way, but we have each other that we can rely on. It's nice to know that other people are thinking about you, other people care about you, and they are praying for you. Well, who is Barnabas? So we said that today we're talking about encouragement. Who is Barnabas? If I asked you, what do you know about Barnabas? Probably wouldn't get a whole lot of information from you, because Barnabas is not one of the persons that we usually study about. We study about maybe the 12 disciples, or we study about the Apostle Paul, but Barnabas, we're not quite sure about Barnabas. But Barnabas is probably one of the most important people in all of the New Testament. In fact, if it were not for Barnabas, we may not have much of the New Testament, because Barnabas supported the Apostle Paul, and Paul was the person who wrote most books in the New Testament, so we might not have any of Paul's books if it weren't for Barnabas. And of course, Barnabas supported this guy by the name of John Mark, who wrote the Gospel according to Mark. So we might have only had 3 Gospels instead of 4 if it weren't for Barnabas. So let's learn a little bit about Barnabas. First of all, we learned that his name that he was born with was not Barnabas. His name was Joseph. He was a Levite, and he was from Cyprus. So what do we know about him just from that? Well, first of all, we know that he's not from Jerusalem. Cyprus is over 250 miles away, so his family evidently moved away. And he moved with them, and as you know, when the children of Israel went into the promised land, they had the 12 tribes of Israel, and they divided up the land among the 12 tribes. All the tribes got some land except for the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi got no land because the tribe of Levi served in the temple. And in the temple, they would receive the tithes and the offerings, and they would pay those who served in the temple from that. So they were not allowed actually to own land. But now here's this guy by the name of Joseph, and he's a Levite. Now, his family, being Levite, shouldn't have owned any land. And he's from Cyprus. He never served in the temple, at least not as far as we know. He moved away, 250 miles away. So he's not a person who's serving in the temple, and he's not a person whose family owned land or inherited land, part of the promised land. And his name is Joseph, not Barnabas. So that kind of right away gives us a bunch of questions, and we're going to try to find the answers today. Notice Acts 4:36 says, "He was also called Barnabas by the apostles," which translated means son of encouragement.